All right, so get ready because today we're taking a deep dive into Mrs Bectors Food Specialities Ltd.
MBFSL, right?
Yep, MBFSL. They're a big deal in India, especially for biscuits and all sorts of bakery
Oh,
products.
yeah, I've seen them around.
So they just released their Q2 FY25 financial results,
So,
and you were kind enough to send over their company filings and that investor presentation.
happy to do it. Always interesting to peek under the hood, right?
Absolutely. So we're going to break it all down, cut to the chase, let the listener know what's important, so they can quickly grasp how the company's doing.
Sound good.
Where should we start?
Well, I think what's really fascinating about MBFSL is how they're riding this wave of growth in India.
The economy's doing well, right?
Exactly. People have more money to spend, and they're spending it on food, among other
Makes
things.
sense.
And even with inflation being a global thing, India's consumption growth is actually outpacing some major economies like the U.S., China, even Germany.
That's interesting. And it makes me think about something. Didn't we talk about how India's per capita spending on biscuits is still relatively low?
You have a great memory. You're absolutely right. Compared to, say, Europe or the U.S., there's still a lot of room to grow.
So that's what makes MBFSL's position so interesting, right?
Exactly. Huge potential market just waiting to be tapped. It's like they're at the start of something really big.
All right, well, let's get into the numbers. Revenue for Q2 FY25 was up almost 20% year over year, hitting 496.3 crores. That's a pretty significant jump.
It is. And what's even more impressive, I think, is when you zoom out a bit, look at the past 24 months.
Okay.
Their growth is even bigger, close to 43%. So we're not just talking about a one-time bump. It's consistent, accelerating growth.
Now, I'm always curious about the profit side of things. What's the story there?
So their EBITDA, earnings before interest, taxes, depreciation, and amortization.
Right, a measure of profitability.
Exactly. Came in at Rs 70.5 crores,
Yeah.
a 9% increase year over year. And their profit after tax, or PT, reached Rs 38.9 crores, a good 4.4% jump.
So they're definitely making money. Was there anything about the profit numbers that was surprising or stood out to you?
I did notice their EBITDA margin. Basically, how much profit they're making on each rupee of sales. It was a bit lower this quarter compared to last year.
Interesting.
Not necessarily a red flag, though. Could be a few things. Ingredient costs have been a challenge for food companies,
Right.
or it could even be strategic investments they're making for future growth.
Okay, makes sense. Definitely something to watch. So overall, it seems like a pretty positive picture.
I'd say so.
Now, you mentioned MBFSL is big in both biscuits and bakery products. Are both those segments doing equally well?
Let's break it down. The biscuit segment is their star performer this quarter, no question, growing a whopping 24% year over year and hitting Rs 320 crores in revenue.
That's a big chunk of their overall business.
It is.
What about the bakery segment?
Bakery also had a good quarter, growing at 19% year over year, reaching Rs 167 crores.
Still very respectable.
Oh, for sure. And what's interesting is if we compare both segments to where they were back in Q2 FY23,
Okay, yeah.
biscuits have jumped by 55%, bakery by 33%. That kind of growth is well above average for the Indian food industry. They're clearly doing something right.
They must be investing a lot to support that kind of growth. New factories, equipment, that sort of thing.
You hit the nail on the head. Between fiscal year 2020 and fiscal year 2024, they pumped over Rs 469 crores into expanding and upgrading their manufacturing facilities.
Wow.
They've essentially built out this network of state-of-the-art factories,
That's impressive.
even sourcing equipment from leading international manufacturers. They're really upping their game.
So they can make a lot more products, and they can do it efficiently and with high quality.
Exactly. That's the idea.
Now, are they mostly focused on India, or are they looking at expanding beyond their borders?
This is an interesting tidbit. They actually have a dedicated subsidiary in the UAE.
Oh.
It gives them a base to really focus on markets in the Middle East and Africa.
So they're definitely thinking globally.
Absolutely.
It sounds like they're in a great position, but how are they actually driving that growth? What's their strategy?
Well, they've got a pretty aggressive growth strategy, I'd say. They're expanding in their existing markets, but also entering new geographic areas. And they're not limiting themselves to just one way of reaching customers. They're using what's called an omni-channel distribution strategy.
Omnichannel, huh? Sounds fancy.
It's really about making sure their products are everywhere consumers might shop.
So, like what?
You'll find them in the traditional retail stores, of course, but also in those big modern trade supermarkets, online through e-commerce platforms, and even those super fast delivery apps.
So they're making sure it's super easy to find their products, no matter where you are.
Exactly, covering all their bases.
Smart. What else are they doing to, boost sales and keep that momentum going?
Well, partnerships are a big part of it. They've got some major partnerships that are really helping them grow.
Oh, like what?
They're a preferred supplier to some really big QSRs, quick service restaurants, like McDonald's, for instance.
Wow, the Golden Arches. That's impressive.
It is. And they've also partnered with Walmart to help them with exports.
Okay, so they've got these big name partnerships. They're making sure their products are easy to find. What else?
Well, never underestimate product innovation. They're always coming up with new things to get customers excited.
Oh, right, right. What have they got?
They've recently introduced frozen buns, for example,
Yeah.
and dessert jars. And they're also expanding their line of premium breads to tap into that market.
And they're not forgetting about the health-conscious consumer, are they?
Not at all. They've got their no maida, no palm oil bread range,
Mm-hmm.
really appealing to those looking for healthier options.
It's a growing market for sure.
It is. So they're really smart to be getting ahead of that curve.
Okay, so they're growing, expanding, innovating. Can they keep it up?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? One of the things they're doing to try and ensure that is focusing on cost optimization and efficiency. They've launched what they call Project Impact 1.0 to really tackle this head on.
Okay, so what does that actually involve?
It's about fine-tuning their whole operation,
Mm-hmm.
optimizing things like logistics, their supply chain, making their sales force even more effective. They're getting strategic about sourcing raw materials and cutting down on waste, just squeezing every bit of value they can out of their operations.
Very efficient.
Precisely.
It's not all about profits, though, right? What are they doing in terms of social responsibility? That's something people really care about these days.
You're absolutely right. And it's something I always consider when looking at a company. MBFSL has this program called Goodness Together, and it's really impressive.
Fill us in. What are they doing?
They're doing some great work in the community. They're helping to improve school infrastructure, running mobile health camps, particularly focused on women's health. They're even taking steps to conserve water bodies.
Really making a difference.
Trying to. It's nice to see a company doing well while also doing good.
It is. So overall, it sounds like MBFSL is really hitting their stride.
Yeah, they are.
How do you see their performance so far in FY25?
Based on this second quarter performance and their current strategies, I think they're very well positioned for continued success.
Of course, there are always challenges, especially in a fast-growing market like India.
Absolutely. Managing those input costs, especially with global inflation being what it is, they've also got to keep an eye on the competition. And then there's the challenge of executing those ambitious expansion plans. So, yeah, lots to keep an eye on in the coming months.
It'll be interesting to see how it all plays out. But before we do that, I just want to make sure we've hit those key takeaways for our listener, kind of summarize where we are.
Good idea.
So first off, their revenue and profit growth. Consistently strong for the past 2 years. They clearly have a solid position in the market, and they're good at what they do.
Yeah.
They also seem to really understand the market and how it's changing. They're focusing on premium products, they're launching new and innovative items, and of course, those healthier options like the no maida, no palm oil bread, that's a big one. That kind of adaptability is going to be crucial moving forward.
Agreed.
And we can't forget their focus on operational efficiency and social responsibility.
Right, right. Those aren't just buzzwords for them. They're taking real action.
Exactly. So they're killing it in India, no question.
Yep.
But it's their international expansion that really has me thinking. It's like they're entering uncharted territory in a way.
Well, it definitely brings up some interesting questions.
Yeah.
As they move into these new markets, how will they adapt what they offer to appeal to different cultures, different tastes?
Right.
And how will their marketing change? Those are things we'll definitely want to consider as we continue this deep dive.
It's like they're building a whole new business while running their existing one. Makes you wonder how they'll manage it all. But before we get into that, let's rewind a bit and take a closer look at their journey so far, how they got to where they are.
Let's do it. All right, welcome back to our deep dive into Mrs Bectors Food Specialities.
So we've gotten a taste of their recent performance, kind of a snapshot.
Right.
But let's zoom out a little, look at the bigger picture. Their historical financials, really understand how their growth has been trending.
Okay, yeah, that's a good idea. It gives us some context.
Exactly. So what kind of things can we see? Any big takeaways from their past performance?
Well, one of the first things I always look at is just how overall revenue has been trending over the past few years.
Yeah, that's a good place to start.
So from fiscal year 2021 to fiscal year 2024,
Okay.
their consolidated revenue has gone from Rs 881 crores to Rs 1,624 crores, nearly double their revenue in just 3 years.
That's pretty impressive growth.
It is.
Is that coming from both the biscuit and bakery segments, or is one kind of outshining the other?
Both segments have definitely been contributing.
Okay.
But the biscuit segment has been the real engine, I would say, growing at a compound annual growth rate, or CAGR, of 23% over the past few years. They hit Rs 991 crores in FY24, just in biscuits. That's a lot of biscuits.
They're really riding that wave of India's biscuit love.
They are.
Now, what about the bakery segment? How's that doing? Is it keeping pace?
It has also shown really strong growth, though at a slightly slower pace than the biscuit segment. Their CAGR is around 17% for bakery.
Still pretty good.
Oh yeah, for sure. They reached Rs 572 crores in revenue in FY24 for the bakery segment, so still very significant.
Absolutely. Now, all this revenue growth is great, but have they been able to keep their profit margins healthy while growing so quickly?
That's the key question, right?
Yeah.
Let's start with their gross profit margins. Basically, how much profit they're making on each rupee of sales after subtracting the cost of goods sold. And those have been pretty stable, I'd say, over the past few years, hovering between 45% and 47%.
That's reassuring.
It is. Shows they're managing costs effectively, not sacrificing profit just to get bigger.
Right. But their EBITDA margins, I think you mentioned those were a bit lower in the most recent quarter.
Yeah, they have fluctuated a little more, ranging from 12.4% to 14.9% in recent years.
Okay.
A few things could be contributing to that,
Like what?
Raw material prices, maybe some investments in new equipment or marketing campaigns, things that can impact profitability in the short term, but could pay off later.
Right. Makes sense. Something to keep an eye on, but not necessarily a big red flag.
Right.
Now, I always like to look at debt levels when I'm thinking about a company's financial health. Are there any red flags there?
Not at all. They've been really responsible with their debt. Their net debt-to-equity ratio, which basically measures how much debt they have compared to their equity, has consistently been below 0.2 over the past few years.
That's good, right?
That's very healthy. Shows they're not overly reliant on borrowing to fuel their growth.
Okay, good. What about their cash flow? Is the money actually coming in to support these growth plans?
Absolutely. Their cash flow from operations, the cash generated from their core business activities, has been strong and consistent,
Okay.
ranging from Rs 84 crores to Rs 164 crores over the past 4 years. So they definitely have the money to invest in expansion, new research, those kinds of strategic things without taking on more debt.
So they've got their finances in order, it sounds like. Any other interesting takeaways from their past performance before we move on?
Yes, actually. One more area where they've really excelled, working capital management.
Okay, and what does that mean exactly in plain English?
Think of it as making sure they have enough cash on hand to keep the business running smoothly.
Okay.
They've been really good at things like reducing the amount of time it takes to sell their inventory, speeding up how quickly customers pay their invoices, and getting favorable payment terms from their suppliers.
Yeah.
All of that helps.
So they're not just good at making money, they're good at managing it, too.
Exactly. It's a sign of a well-managed company,
Yeah.
one that's thinking long-term.
All right, it seems like MBFSL has a pretty impressive track record. Really curious to hear what you think about the future. All right, so we've covered a lot of ground with MBFSL. Strong recent performance, impressive growth over the past few years, and a really solid financial foundation.
Seems like they're firing on all cylinders, right?
They really do. But as you mentioned before, the food industry, it's always changing.
Always.
So as we look ahead, what are the big things that investors, analysts, what should they be watching? What's going to shape MBFSL's future?
Well, I'd say one of the most crucial things is their ability to manage those input costs.
Yeah. Ingredient prices.
Yeah, we talked about inflation, right? It's a global issue. And food companies, they're hit especially hard.
Right. Wheat, sugar, all those basic ingredients.
Exactly. Those can really cut into profits if they're not careful.
They've already got that Project Impact 1.0 going to try and improve efficiency and cut costs. Do you think that'll be enough?
It's a good start, for sure. But they're going to have to be really nimble, really responsive to keep those costs under control.
Especially with the global situation changing all the time.
Exactly. It's unpredictable. Beyond that, They've got to keep innovating.
New products, you mean?
New products. It's so important in this industry. They've done a great job so far. Those frozen buns, the dessert jars, expanding their premium offerings.
You're on trend.
They are. But they can't let up. Consumers are always looking for what's next, that exciting new flavor, that new format, especially in snacks and bakery.
And health-conscious options seem more and more important these days.
Oh, absolutely. And MBFSL seems to get that.
Yeah, they're no maida, no palm oil bread.
Exactly. A smart move.
Right.
That demand for healthier snacks, healthier bakery items, it's only going to grow.
So they're ahead of the curve on that one.
It seems so.
Yeah.
Now, their international expansion, that's another big one to watch.
Right, we talked about that a bit.
They've dipped their toes in the Middle East, Africa.
Mm.
But to really scale up those operations, that's a whole other challenge.
Navigating different cultures, regulations.
It's like building a whole new business on top of the one they've already got.
So do you think they can pull it off?
Well, it's going to be a test of their strategic planning, how well they can execute. They'll need to choose the right markets, really understand what those consumers want.
And make sure they can actually get their products to them.
Exactly. Distribution networks, the whole 9 yards. Lots of potential, but there are risks too.
And as consumers become more aware of, sustainability, ethical sourcing, that kind of thing, how do you think MBFSL measures up?
That's so important these days, especially for food companies.
Yeah.
Consumers are paying attention. They want to know where their food comes from, how it's made. It's not just about the bottom line anymore.
Right.
It's about purpose, making a positive impact.
MBFSL does have that Goodness Together initiative.
Yeah.
Is that enough, or will they need to do more to really meet those expectations?
It's a good start,
Mm-hmm.
but sustainability, it's a journey. It never really ends.
Right.
They'll need to keep looking for ways to improve, reduce their environmental impact, operate ethically, all of that.
So you've laid out the opportunities, the challenges. Any final thoughts before we wrap things up?
MBFSL is at a really interesting point in their journey. They have momentum, a strong leadership team, a history of success.
But the choices they make now, that's going to be key.
It is. Those decisions will determine if they can really become a global leader in this industry. It's exciting to watch.
It is. Well, this has been a fascinating deep dive. We've gone through their financials, looked at their strategies, considered the bigger picture. It's amazing what you can learn from taking the time to really understand a company's story.
It is. And for anyone listening, I encourage you to keep digging. Don't just take our word for it. Look into the Indian food industry. Check out MBFSL's competitors. Really think about those bigger economic and social forces at play.
The more you know, the better.
Exactly. Whether you're an investor, an analyst, or just a curious consumer, understanding the bigger picture helps you make better decisions.
Absolutely. Well, on that note, I think we'll wrap up this deep dive. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
And until next time, keep learning, keep exploring, keep asking those insightful questions. That's how we all get a little smarter.